Welcome, villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I'm your guide, All Kage, the creator and author of all the what-if stories you see on this channel, with your awesome suggestions, of course. I write, edit, and produce every story you hear, so if you're wondering who made it, it's me. I hope you enjoy today's video. Be sure to leave your what-if ideas in the comments and subscribe if you're new. Today's story is, What If Naruto Was in Ben 10 Part 2? I am very sorry for the wait. There is some personal stuff going on, along with some changes in my life that I am taking, so my stories were affected and it is the reason why I ended the Avatar series early. For those saying I'm taking too long to post. I write and edit everything here by myself, and with the changes I just spoke on, it's gonna be harder for me to get things out quicker, but I am adjusting, so there will be 2 videos this week. I must warn you, these videos are basically on 1 episode in Ben 10 each. The next parts however will con on more episodes. I just needed to catch up with things before I could get started. Before we dive in, shout out time. Thanks so much to everyone who comments, keep them coming. Our Patreon shoutouts are the same as they always been, a big thank you to them. If you'd like to support the channel, check out my Patreon, link in the description. For just $5, you can get early access to full text transcripts, thumbnails, ad-free videos, and updates for my what-ifs. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this what-if. Part 2, Animo. The Hidden Leaf Village, Day. The sun hung low in the sky, a pale eye watching over Konoha from behind thin clouds. Lanterns flickered along the outer walls, casting faint pools of golden light over damp stone. The village was quiet. Too quiet for some. High above the rooftops, inside the dim light of the Hokage's office, Kakashi Hatake stood by a tall, open window, one hand resting in his pocket while the other slowly turned the pages of a scroll he wasn't truly reading. The dull hum of cicadas echoed in the distance, but his eye, his single, tired eye, was sharp, fixed on the darkness beyond the walls. His hair, silver and untamed, rustled faintly with the breeze slipping through the open pane. The heavy robe of the 6th Hokage draped over him like a weight, not armor. His mask, as always, remained, but his expression behind it was unreadable, neither peaceful nor tense. Just still. A quiet knock broke the moment. "Enter," Kakashi said without turning. A shinobi in standard flak jacket and black underlayer stepped in, closing the door softly behind him. He carried a sealed scroll and a subtle edge of hesitation. "We've picked something up, from outside the continent," the shinobi began, voice cautious, as if still unsure it was worth disturbing the Hokage over. Kakashi turned then, slowly. His expression didn't change, but the room seemed to cool by a degree. "Go on." The shinobi stepped closer and unrolled the scroll between them, revealing a faint, drawn-out pulse signature. The barrier team registered a sudden flare of chakra. Not ours, not any of the surrounding countries either. Kakashi studied the readings in silence. The signature was distant. Weak by the time it reached their sensors. But distinct, shaped. Controlled. This wasn't some wild surge or natural phenomenon, someone had used a jutsu. What kind of jutsu? We don't know, but the scale, it had to be something powerful. Focused, not like an explosion, more refined. Precise. Kakashi's brow furrowed faintly beneath his hitayate. He knew what that meant. That kind of chakra only came from the old world. From people trained like they were, or worse, trained better. And you're sure it came from outside the elemental nations? Yes sir, far west, across the ocean, somewhere no shinobi should be. A pause. Kakashi turned back toward the window, watching the wind curl through the trees below. Could be him, he said, almost to himself. The shinobi raised his head. "Sir?" Kakashi said nothing for a moment. "Then, send a request to the sensory division. Tell them to isolate the signature and match it against old archives. If it's who I think it is, we may need to act." The shinobi didn't question it. He bowed, took the scroll, and left without another word. When the door clicked shut again, Kakashi remained alone. He looked up at the stars. "You've been quiet a long time, Naruto." The RV hummed over a stretch of cracked road, tires bumping and thudding every so often as it passed over loose gravel. A low rumble filled the space, broken only by the occasional creak of cabinets and the soft whir of the AC unit. They were somewhere between nowhere and nowhere else, trees lining the roadside like silent watchers. Naruto sat on one side of the dining booth, elbows resting loosely on the table, back slightly hunched. He wasn't exactly nervous. Just uncertain. Across from him, Ben and Gwen stared like they were waiting for something heavier than words. Their expressions were different. Ben's was cautious, almost wary, while Gwen looked like she'd been piecing together a puzzle all day and had just found the final corner piece. He hadn't expected this kind of attention, not from them. The silence hung awkwardly for a moment before Ben finally broke it. "So, what are you?" Naruto blinked, straight to it, "Huh?" He leaned back slightly, dragging his fingers through his hair before glancing at the window, as if the trees might offer some answer he hadn't already given himself. "Not an alien, if that's what you're thinking," he said. "And not a mutant or science experiment or whatever else you've seen on TV." Gwen raised an eyebrow. "Then what? You summoned a toad the size of a car. And yesterday, you took down a robot with glowing orb." He exhaled through his nose, calm, measured. He wasn't afraid of telling them the truth, it was just something he hadn't had to do in a long time. "There's a place, far from here, a world hidden behind the edges of this one, where people train their whole lives to control an energy called Chakra. That's where I'm from." Ben crossed his arms. "And you're like a super soldier or something?" Naruto nodded. "Something like that. I was a shinobi, or in other words a ninja, not like ninja you would see on TV though." He watched Ben's reaction closely, confused, sure, but not afraid. Gwen leaned in slightly, not interrupting. "Just absorbing. I was trained to fight, to protect people, but where I'm from, it wasn't just monsters and robots. It was politics, war, villages that used kids like weapons." His eyes flicked toward the tabletop. "And when my teacher died, I didn't have a reason to stay. Not the full truth." He wouldn't tell them about the village watching, about how revealing his chakra risked being found. But it wasn't a lie either. If Konoha learned where he was, things would change fast. He liked the way things were now. He wasn't going to give that up. Gwen's voice came quiet. "So why now? Why tell us now instead of sooner?" Nig to sound rude. His gaze lifted. "Because before, I hadn't wanted to use my abilities for my own reasons. But to help Ben, I would need to use them, so I would also need to explain myself." Ben looked like he didn't know what to say to that. He just sat back, arms still crossed but his jaw unclenched. Gwen watched him closely, but there was a softness in her eyes now, like she understood something she didn't before. The RV rattled again as it crested a hill. From the front of the vehicle, the old radio cracked with static before a voice broke through in a burst of urgency. "Fire reported on Route 12 middle of Washington, an apartment fully engulfed. Emergency services on delay." Ben's head shot up. "Grandpa, we gotta check that out, me and Naruto can help." Naruto raised a hand, already shaking his head. "No defense against fire, that'd be suicide for me." He gestured to the half-dismantled robot parts piled up beside the sink. "Besides, I've got a mess of circuits and scrap I need to figure out. I have a cert." Ben slumped forward, clearly disappointed. "Fine," he muttered, dragging the word out like a sigh. "But it won't be the same without you." Naruto gave a small, lopsided grin. "I'll catch the next one." Ben turned without another word, slapping the watch faceplate with a green flash. Then a burst of red light shot through the RV. Heat blast stood in his place, flames dancing off his shoulders as heat shimmered through the air. Naruto watched him head toward the door and thought. Heat Blast, that's the name he went with? Without hesitation, Ben flung open the door and launched himself into the night, a fiery streak arcing out of the moving vehicle. He literally scorched the floor, Gwen muttered. We could have pulled over. Naruto shrugged, still eyeing the empty doorway. Wouldn't be Ben if he did. Naruto sat cross-legged on the RV floor with parts of the dismantled robot spread out across the space like a metal autopsy. Panels, wiring, half-fused plating. A handful of components sparked if you touched them the wrong way. His fingers worked quickly, almost automatically, but his mind was somewhere deeper. In the fight, he'd noticed it, how the robot locked onto Ben the second it came online. Every motion, every second thought, every blast, was it tracking the watch? It didn't go for him, not for Gwen, just Ben. That's what made it easier to dismantle. It never even considered him the real threat. He pulled out the cracked core and turned it over in his hand, frowning. This robot had been buried, not stored, not guarded, buried. Like someone wanted it forgotten, so who put it there, who built it? And why the hell was it after Ben? The exoskeleton was mostly intact. He hadn't seen tech like this before, not in the nations, not on any continent. Not even from the black market smugglers that orbited the land of rivers. It was too advanced, alien, almost. Max's theory might have sounded wild the first time he said it. But Naruto glanced at the plating again. Fluid leaked from a cracked joint, thin like water, but it sparked when it touched the wiring. Bioelectric, almost alive, it pulsed under the surface like it had its own heart. And the circuits, if you could even call them that, were layered and braided like nerve bundles, not wires. The core was the most confusing part. It didn't run on chakra, electricity, or any known energy source he recognized. He'd gotten distracted again. Naruto blinked, shaking his head. No, he needed to focus. Ben had something powerful strapped to his wrist, the kind of power people kill for. If that watch was alien, and if it was sending out any kind of signal, then Ben wasn't just a kid on a summer trip anymore. He was a walking target. Not just for people on Earth either. If the tech was from space, then someone out there could be tracking him. Could already be here. That thought made Naruto's jaw tighten. He needed to learn what he could from this machine. Reverse engineer what he could. Maybe even build something from the exoparts, a scanner, a jammer, armor, whatever it took to protect his little brother. And maybe something else, something that made sure no one from the other world, his old world, could track him down again. The thought didn't sit long before Gwen's voice cut in. You're really into that robot thing? Huh? Naruto practically jumped, then glanced over his shoulder with a sheepish grin. Didn't hear you come in. Gwen leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes flicking between the mess of parts and the laptop screen where his decoder program was still spinning through alien symbols. I've seen Focused, she said. This is, like, mad scientist levels of focused. He gave a low laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. Guess I got a little carried away. It's not like I've figured it all out. He gestured to the mess. It's not tech from anywhere I've seen, not from any continent. That kind of confirms what Grandpa said about aliens. She didn't say anything at first, just nodded. Naruto hesitated before continuing. Do you ever feel like Max is hiding something? Gwen's face twitched slightly. He's always been a little too prepared for this kind of stuff. I guess it was weird he suggested aliens when first seeing Ben as Heat Blast. Exactly. Naruto nodded. He suggested aliens like it wasn't even a stretch, like he already knew. Gwen just shrugged. He's Grandpa. I gave up trying to figure him out years ago, especially the food choices. I'm just hoping when we go shopping we get to pick our own food. Naruto let the silence settle before dropping it. Anyway. He turned back to the screen. Symbols still undeciphered. I haven't cracked the language yet. It's advanced, more than anything I've ever come across. But once my system finishes decoding it, we'll be able to see what the robot saw, and maybe figure out why it only went after Ben. Gwen tilted her head, and after that? He glanced back with a shrug, might make something for us. She frowned, us? You, me, Grandpa. Max looked up from the driver's seat at that. Naruto caught the flicker of interest but didn't comment on it. Naruto kept going, Ben's got the watch, yeah. But that means the danger's gonna follow him, and if we're around him, then we're in it too. He sat back, wiping a smudge of oil from his palm. I can protect all of you, that's not the issue, but it's smarter if we can all defend ourselves. Gear, armor. Tech, something to even the odds. Gwen studied him for a second, maybe surprised, maybe not. She opened her mouth to say something, but didn't get the chance. The radio crackled overhead. 2 suspects involved in the building fire are on the move. It's believed they used the blaze as a diversion to steal high-value artifacts from the Natural History Museum. If anyone is in proximity, proceed with extreme caution. Suspects are armed and dangerous. Last seen heading westbound on Jansen Hollow Road, a blur past the window, headlights streaked by, tires screamed on pavement, Naruto's head snapped up, through the front windshield, a black sedan tore down the road ahead of them, weaving hard into the next lane. He locked eyes with Max, go after them. Max gave a small nod, already shifting gears. I'm on it. The RV roared to life, tires screeching as it peeled onto the highway behind the suspects. Wind whipped past the frame as they picked up speed, engine rumbling deep beneath the floor. Naruto reached over and secured the scattered robot parts with a quick seal scroll. His eyes stayed locked on the road. Whatever was waiting down this chase, it wasn't just about a robbery. Not anymore. The wind howled as the RV tore down the cracked highway, the rusted chassis of the rust bucket rattling with every bump and turn. Naruto opened the side door mid-chase, gripping the metal frame as the force of the speed shoved against him. Heat rushed past his face. Asphalt blurred below. He grimaced, times like these, he muttered, I really wish I had some kind of long-range jutsu. He had the scrolls, stuff Jiraiya gave him, ones he hadn't touched since landing in America. Too dangerous, too flashy. But now he felt the gaps in his arsenal like bruises under the skin. His eyes dropped to his hand, pale, calloused, steady. He flexed his fingers, trying to remember the formation he practiced only once. He hadn't trained it long enough to call it stable. Didn't matter, they needed this to end fast. He leaned halfway out the door, calling back to Max. Get me just a little closer. Hold on tight, Max said, voice rough with tension as he swerved around a ditch. Naruto planted his feet and exhaled, focusing. He pulled chakra into his core, separating the 2 halves, physical and spiritual. That part had always come easy. What didn't come easy was how wrong it felt now. The chakra inside him wasn't like it used to be. It had changed, ever since that battle, since the fox was gone. This part, his physical energy, was heavier, hungrier, crimson seeped out from his arm like rising mist, darker than blood, darker than the fox had ever been. It danced along his skin, wild and pulsing. He directed his hand forward, and let it rip. A compressed bolt of chakra screamed through the air, invisible until it hit. The car in front jolted as if yanked by a god's hand, its back end crumpling and lifting violently. The tires left the road. The whole vehicle flipped mid-spin before crashing down with a brutal metallic shriek. Precious metal and velvet-lined boxes burst from the trunk, flying mid-air. Naruto vanished from the RV door in a blur and reappeared among the debris. His hands moved fast, snatching the valuables one by one before they hit the pavement. He landed atop the flipped car, crouched, breathing steady. The sirens were already growing near. The rust bucket skidded to a stop ahead. Naruto jogged back toward it and tossed one last look at the wreck behind him. He left the goods neatly piled on the dented roof. Police could sort out the rest. He exhaled hard and muttered under his breath, glad that worked, but still need to figure out how else I can use that. It was raw chakra shaping, barely controlled. Just form, no function. He had the foundation, but none of the precision. He needed to train. He needed to evolve. By the time he reached the RV, the others were already waiting. "Nice work," Gwen said, though her eyes were narrowed. "But, you hit that car hard, more than you usually would." Naruto brushed some dirt from his pants and shrugged, didn't like what they did. "What do you mean?" Max asked, watching him from the driver's seat mirror. "They set a fire, in a neighborhood." Naruto's voice was quiet but cold. "Just so they could rob a place, that's low." No one argued with that. Gwen tilted her head. "That attack you used, what was that?" Naruto glanced at his hand again, then leaned against the RV wall. "It's chakra. What shinobi have to use multiple abilities, made up of two parts, physical energy from your body, and spiritual energy from your mind and spirit. Though in this case, I was only using chakra, one part of it at least. Normally, they're combined when I use a jutsu, but my body changed." He paused. "If I separate them, they act differently. What you saw, that was my physical energy. It pulls, consumes. I don't often use it, however, it's kinda new to me." "Sounds risky," Max said, but not disapprovingly. "More like an old soldier noticing a new kind of weapon." "Yeah," Naruto nodded, "but it's useful, just needs practice." Max gave a low hum and flicked on the radio again. Static crackled for a moment before an announcer's voice came through. "We'll swing by to pick up Ben, then in the morning, we'll hit the Megamart to restock." "Please tell me we get to pick the food this time," Gwen groaned, already bracing herself. Naruto chuckled, slumping back onto the bench. Max's definition of food is terrifying. The RV rolled on into the night, wheels humming against the road. Naruto's mind already drifting back to chakra patterns, to the alien tech scattered in the back, to the future battles waiting around the corner. He needed to be ready. Not just for himself, but for them. For Ben. For Gwen. For the family he had. Beneath the city, the sewers pulsed with quiet, unnatural life. Dim green lights flickered overhead, casting shadows across the damp concrete walls. The air was thick with the stench of rot, oil, and something far worse, fur wet with chemicals, flesh warped by science. The floor shifted with movement. Dozens of misshapen eyes blinked in the dark, tracking their creator. He stood in the center of the chamber, facing an array of mismatched monitors strung together with wires and rusted bolts. The largest screen played a muted news broadcast. Washington, D.C. was in another uptick of chaos, higher crime rates, reports of strange disappearances, rising unease in the city's heart. He smiled. Not a sharp grin, but something deeper, slower, almost fond. A low growl came from his side, followed by the scrape of claws on stone. One of the larger creatures, a wolf with bone plating and 2 extra eyes, pressed its snout into his palm. He stroked its head absent-mindedly, fingers brushing over scales where fur should have been. "Do you hear that?" His voice was calm. Almost warm. "The city's calling, they just don't know it yet." More animals circled closer, spiders the size of pit bulls. A vulture with metal joints replacing half its wingspan, a toad with translucent skin revealing pulsating veins beneath. He turned his back to the screen. "Maybe it's time I reminded them what change really looks like." His gaze flicked back to the broadcast as it replayed footage from earlier, a violent robbery at the Natural History Museum. Broken glass, scorched tile, police baffled, suspects have been taken into custody. His lips curled into a sharper grin. "Phase 2, he whispered. The screens around him blinked red, timers, schematics, and mutated DNA strands spiraling into place. One of the creatures screeched. He didn't flinch. Yes, he said, louder now, voice rising as he turned to face the depths of the chamber. Let's give them something historic. And the sewer trembled with the sound of claws dragging forward. You should have seen me, Ben's voice rang out as the automatic doors whooshed open. The family stepped into the Mega Mart, leaving the cool shadow of the rust bucket behind. Daylight streamed through the wide glass windows, bouncing off linoleum floors and polished metal shelves. The front of the store glowed with natural light, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the night before. It was insane, Ben continued, practically buzzing beside Naruto. I saved everyone in that building, like it was nothing. Even though I couldn't touch them, I could sorta bend the fire with my own flames, make these little paths for them to get through. He adjusted his jacket and swung his arms a bit as he spoke, reliving the moment with each gesture. Naruto walked beside him, quiet, alert. They were there for food and supplies. Grandpa Max insisted this store had everything, but Naruto kept his attention split between the aisles and Ben's voice. He listened closely. Ben wasn't just proud. He was excited. Consumed by what he'd done. Not just the act of saving people, but the power behind it. That was what made Naruto pause. From what he knew of his brother, Ben had always had a good heart. He wanted to help people. Wanted to do the right thing. But the way he talked about it now, the way his eyes lit up, the near shaky grin that kept sneaking onto his face, it wasn't just about doing good. It was about what he could do. I mean, seriously, Ben said, throwing his arms wide, it was like I could do anything when I transformed. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly. Not because he was angry, not because he didn't understand. But because he did. All too well. Ben reached for a bag of chips as they moved deeper into the Mega Mart, tossing it into the cart Naruto pushed without really looking. He walked backward now, half facing his brother, his voice still lit with energy. I mean, there was this moment, he said, hands moving in fast arcs, where the heat started closing in. I couldn't control the already existing fire, so I just used my own fire to bend a way past it. Naruto stopped the cart near an aisle with canned goods. He leaned on the handle, watching Ben closely. That's good, he said, evenly. You kept calm. And used your powers like that. Ben blinked at him, unsure. You don't think it's cool? It's not about cool, Naruto said. It's about control. If already existing fires don't listen to you, it's good you found a way to get past it. But I wouldn't slow down just yet. Power doesn't mean you get to relax. Max glanced back from a shelf lined with jars. Voice rumbling in. He's right, you can get real used to the feeling of being unstoppable. That's when you start making mistakes. Ben's shoulders sagged just a little. I didn't say I was invincible or anything. No, Gwen added, stepping up beside them. But you're talking like it, like the transformation is the only part that matters. Ben turned toward her, brow rising. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, she said carefully, you sound like you're more excited about the fire than the people you saved. Ben scoffed, that's not fair, I was excited to help. Sure, she said. But you didn't sound like it. You said you felt like you could do anything. Not that you were glad they made it out. Ben looked at her, then Naruto, then away. That's not what I meant. Naruto's voice stayed calm. We know, but sometimes it's not about what you mean, it's what people hear. There's a difference between being proud of your power, and being defined by it. Ben rubbed the back of his neck. It's just, when I'm in one of the aliens, I feel like everything makes sense. Like, I finally know what I'm supposed to do, it's clear. There it was. Naruto felt that, knew what it meant for Ben. Then he nodded slowly, yeah, I get that. Ben looked up, surprised. But I've seen what happens when you stop being able to tell where the power ends and you begin. Naruto's voice dropped slightly. You lose things. And sometimes you don't even notice until they're gone. Max gave him a look then, a small one, quiet and thoughtful. Like he understood more than he said. Ben didn't respond to that right away. Gwen folded her arms. Maybe we're just overthinking it, he's still learning, I mean, it's not like we are the ones with the watch. But that's what this is, Max said, stepping back in. Learning, all of it, the saving people. The power, the judgment calls, that's why you've got us. He gave Ben a firm pat on the back, then turned toward Gwen. Speaking of, which one of you knows the difference between celery root and a turnip? Gwen raised a hand reluctantly. Great, Max said. You're with me. He pointed toward the back of the store. We're grabbing produce and a few delicacies. Might take a bit, you two can wander around if you want, but stay in sight. Naruto gave a small wave as Gwen followed Max down the aisle. Ben watched them go, the two taking the cart with them as he fidgeting with a dented can. Naruto nudged him. You good? Ben shrugged, yeah, just thinking. Naruto nodded, good, just don't think too hard, he said with a chuckle before ruffling his brother's head. The two of them wandered the store, drifting past rows of shelves stocked with everything from lawn chairs to electronics. It really did have everything, kitchenware. Tents, fishing rods, giant bins of off-brand cereal. Naruto walked slow, hands in his jacket pockets, letting Ben follow closely. There was no rush. Ben kicked at a fallen wrapper, still turning things over in his head. You think Gwen was right? He asked after a minute. He didn't look at Naruto when he said it. Naruto didn't answer at first. He walked a few more steps in silence, his gaze idling across a display of cheap sunglasses. He did think about it. Gwen had a point, but not the whole picture. Ben probably took it the wrong way. Max gave him a talk, sure, but it was his cousin who really laid down the harder truths. Ben wasn't showing off because he was selfish. He was proud, maybe too proud, not maybe afraid, deep down, of not being enough without the watch. Of losing that clarity he'd felt in the fire. But Naruto had felt that kind of pride before. And he'd seen what it turned into if left unchecked. He exhaled through his nose. She's not wrong, he finally said. Not completely. Ben gave him a look. But she's not completely right either, Naruto added. You do want to help people, that's obvious, I think you're just focusing too much on the watch, like it's the only part of you that matters. Ben shifted uncomfortably. Naruto kept his tone even. You can become a hero without a device, it's a gadget, a powerful one, but it doesn't make you who you are. And it definitely doesn't make you invincible. Ben opened his mouth to argue, I don't think I'm, let's be honest now, Naruto cut in, glancing at him with raised eyebrows. You've been talking like it does. Like the second you transform, nothing can touch you. Ben stayed quiet. I get it, Naruto said. The forms are powerful, and they're fun, I bet. But if you start leaning on them for everything, then what happens when they fail? What happens when you're not fast enough, or strong enough, or it glitches out? Ben frowned, his hand brushing the watch like he could hide it from the question. You've been going in blind, Naruto went on. You don't know what half those forms are even capable of. You're scratching the surface. You should be pushing the limits, figuring out what they can and can't do. Not just flipping the dial and hoping it works out. They turned into another aisle, this one packed with sporting gear, racks of foam footballs and discount helmets. The light from the front windows shimmered across the floor, making the tile glow faintly beneath their feet. Naruto turned to face him fully now. And don't just rely on a gadget. Ben didn't answer at first. He looked down, jaw tight, hands deep in his pockets. After a second, he gave a half-hearted shrug. Kind of hard not to, though. I mean, without it, I'm just some kid. Naruto's voice softened. That's just what you think. Ben looked up. Trust me, Naruto said. You can do so much even without it, you've got instincts, heart. And you care, the rest you can train, that's not just some kid Ben, that someone who can grow into something more. Ben blinked at him, like he wasn't sure what to say. But the words seemed to settle, not fully, but enough. Then the floor trembled. A deep, thunderous boom rang out from somewhere across the Mega Mart. The shelves shook. A few cans toppled from a nearby display and clattered to the ground. People screamed, somewhere off in the distance, glass shattered. Naruto's head snapped toward the noise, his body tensed without thinking. Ben froze, wide-eyed. What was that? Naruto stepped forward, already scanning the far end of the store. Stay close, it's coming from the front. And without another word, they broke into a run. The sharp scent of scorched metal drifted through the Mega Mart as Naruto and Ben moved fast down the aisle toward the front. The closer they got, the more chaotic it became, flickering overhead lights, scattered debris, distant shouting. They skidded to a stop behind a wide display rack stacked with back-to-school lunchboxes. From there, they had a clear view of the massive hole torn through the front of the store, an entire entrance wall ripped apart like paper. A chunk of the parking lot was visible beyond it. Sunlight bleeding in around the wreckage. And standing in the mess, looming between the self-checkouts and fallen merchandise, were two enormous mutated animals. One looked like a canary, but not the chirping, bright yellow kind from a pet shop. This thing was hulking, at least as long as an entire store aisle, with muscular talons that dug into the tile and feathers like jagged black armor. Its beak was sharpened into a serrated curve, and its eyes glowed faintly orange. The other was a frog, but grotesquely warped, its slick green body expanded like it had been overinflated, bulging with muscle and bony protrusions. It had 6 glowing red eyes stacked unevenly across its face and thick horns curling out the sides of its skull. Perched on top of the frog was a man. Older, wrinkled, his pale, greenish-tinted skin sagged at the cheeks, stretched tight at the temples. Long white hair blew around his shoulders, a strange helmet with horn-like prongs wrapped around his head, the tips glowing crimson. Tubes and cables connected it to a chest-mounted device, a piece of worn, buzzing tech, centered around a dial with flickering lights and strange symbols. Red goggles hid his eyes, and a long, black cloak billowed behind him like a villain out of some old cartoon. Ben ducked lower behind the shelf. Okay, not what I expected. They watched as the man climbed down from the frog's back with a sort of sluggish purpose. Boots crunching over the debris. He moved toward the tech section at the front of the store, muttering to himself. Then he began grabbing anything and everything, drones, batteries, tablet screens, wires, loading them into a large sack that had been strapped to the frog's back. Naruto narrowed his eyes behind the shelf, quiet and still. His thoughts moved faster than his heartbeat. The creatures, were they mutated, engineered, summoned? They weren't natural, that was obvious, but what bothered him more was the control. That man rode in on one like it was a horse, the frog barely flinched under his weight, they obeyed. And the tech, what was it for? Why steal all this random gear? It wasn't weapons. Not directly, it looked like someone was building something, or powering something. Ben shifted next to him. We need to do something. Naruto didn't respond right away, his eyes scanned the front of the store, watching the man's pace. There were too many people, too many chances for exposure, too much risk of being seen. I know, he muttered. Just trying to stay off the radar. Ben rolled his eyes. Pretty sure we passed low profile like 5 minutes ago. Naruto looked over at him, half a smirk threatening to form, and then paused. His gaze landed on a cheap plastic mask sitting crookedly on a nearby shelf. It was some tacky superhero thing, the kind of toy a kid would beg for before their mom told them to put it back. Just some molded faceplate with a red lightning bolt on the cheek. Not much. But it would have to do. He grabbed it, pulled the elastic band over his head, and adjusted it until it mostly covered his face. It looked ridiculous, but it worked, barely. When he turned back, Ben was already rolling up his sleeve. You ready? Naruto nodded. Ben twisted the dial on the watch and slammed it down. A flash of green light pulsed outward. In an instant, Ben's form was replaced by something alien and sleek, XLR-8. His body became black and blue, streamlined like a sports car. A helmet-like head with a blue visor swept back into a long, tail-like crest. His feet had become wheel-like talons. And his arms ended in sharp-clawed hands built for speed. The air shimmered slightly around him, like heat waves clinging to his outline. Naruto arched a brow behind the mask. What do you call this one? XLR-8, Ben said, crouching down slightly like a coiled spring. With an 8, don't ask. He gave a quick glance over his shoulder. You gonna help this time? Naruto just smirked, his expression hidden but clear in his eyes. He gave a small nod. Let's move. The second they broke from cover, the chaos began. The older man was already back, on the frog, looking ready to move, but the two were already closing in. XLR-8's claws primed and ready, wind kicked up from his acceleration as he zipped toward the front of the store. Naruto wasn't far behind, one hand already moved into a familiar sign, two shadow clones burst from the smoke at his sides. Together, the trio moved in formation, flanking the monstrous frog and mutant bird that blocked the path forward. The moment Naruto and Ben landed in front of him, the man froze. He blinked, almost insulted. You're not security, he muttered, eyeing them with faint disgust. A child, and some wired-up, mutated lizard. Curious, I wonder who stitched you together. Ben grinned, his voice casual, you don't need to know all that. The man tilted his head, genuinely perplexed. And yet, you stand in my way. Do you actually intend to stop me? Because I cannot begin to explain how foolish that is. Naruto said nothing. The man smirked at the silence, misreading it as hesitation. But Ben stepped forward, his claws flexing. You broke into a mega mart and started stuffing your pockets with tech, he said. Did you really think no one would notice? The man's eyes lit up with recognition. Ah. Now I see, you're trying to play heroes. How noble, how tragically misguided. His voice shifted, dropping into a slow, condescending tone. I will give you one chance to walk away, he said, gesturing grandly toward the aisles. In respect for your courage, and for the thing standing beside you, blonde boy. His expression sharpened. Because if you continue, nothing will stop the great Dr. Animo from bending you both to my will. He threw his arms wide, voice rising with theatrical glee. You still have legs, use them, run, but I won't wait long. Animo stepped back with exaggerated flair, his spine straightening like an actor taking center stage. This world belongs to the strong, to the evolved, and I will remake it in my image. Then, with a twitch of his fingers, he gave the signal. The mutated frog lunged. Ben was already gone, speeding around the creature's legs in a blur, claws dragging shallow grooves across its thick skin. He called out, smirking, you always talk this much, or just when you're losing? Then he gave a signal, the frog lashed out. And the fight began. Animo threw his head back with a barking laugh. Losing, look around you, these creatures, my children, are perfection, years of rejection, years of ridicule, I've transcended your pathetic human limits. Naruto's clone sprang into action, one vaulted over a cracked display case and aimed a spinning heel into the bird's side. It connected, but the canary barely flinched. The second clone swept low, aiming for the ankles. The bird lashed out with a wing and shattered it with a single strike, poof. Naruto narrowed his eyes and surged forward, delivering a chakra-enhanced strike into the frog's thigh. Its leg buckled slightly, but didn't fall. Ben reappeared in a flash, landing 3 hits against the bird's side. Hey, Doc. You're really not selling the whole, superior intellect thing right now. Animo's eyes flared behind his goggles. Insolent pest, you think you understand progress. I've spent decades perfecting my genius, decades. I've lost patience for interruptions. Suddenly, snap. The frog's massive tongue lashed out with a thunderclap of motion. It struck Ben mid-sprint, hurling him like a comet across the room. He slammed into a shelf stacked with cereal boxes and skidded to a groaning stop under bent metal. Ben, Naruto raced to him. Ben coughed, head lolling as he blinked past the stars in his vision. Did anyone get the license plate of the truck that just hit me? Naruto grimaced and helped shove the shelf off his back. You need to focus, these things aren't dumb, they're trained, controlled. Ben blinked, you saying they went to monster school? No, Naruto stood up, scowling. I'm saying he's using them like tools, they're not just mutated, they're weaponized. Animo's voice rang out again, maniacal and proud. Exactly, he howled. Tools to reshape the world in my image. Do you think two overconfident brats can stop the march of science? You should be grateful I haven't recycled you into something useful. Naruto stared him down, jaw set. Animo hadn't moved once from his perch, he was letting his monsters do the work, testing them. And Ben was already down for now. Naruto cracked his knuckles. Fine. If the mad doctor wanted a real test, he'd get one. Naruto turned, breath steadying, but the doctor was already gone. Only the heavy slap of mutated feet echoed down the next aisle. He sprinted after the sound, weaving past broken shelves and displays knocked over in the earlier fight. The second he turned the corner, he saw it. Animo stood with his back hunched, gesturing wildly toward a cracked self-checkout terminal. One of the store workers, a young man in an apron, had tried to wrestle a crate of stolen parts from the doctor's grasp. The frog, silent before, lashed out. Its tongue cracked through the air, wrapping around the worker's body like a whip. It coiled tighter, dragging him up as his legs kicked helplessly in the air. Naruto's stomach dropped. The man was choking, eyes wide, chest heaving, nails digging at the slick muscle wrapped around him. Panic lit every inch of his body. Without hesitation, Naruto surged forward. Chakra burned to life in his palm, spiraling, pulsing, alive. Rasengan. The orb hit the frog's center mass, there was a dull thud. The creature barely moved. Naruto landed in a crouch, teeth clenched. Nothing? The frog blinked once, slow and disinterested, tongue still wrapped around the man's chest. And Animo, he just laughed. Loud, sharp, cruel. Yes, this is how it's supposed to be, his arms flailed wildly, voice rising into a frenzy. You see now, this is what power looks like, I decide the laws, I decide who lives. Naruto's fists tightened. Animo stepped forward, shouting now, spit flying from his lips. When I finish phase 2, when my new order takes root, I will reshape this world. Not with politicians, not with war, but with evolution. Genetic order, I'll be the king of the world. The frog's tongue coiled tighter, the worker gasped. I'll turn Washington, D.C. into Washington, B.C., Animo growled, and I'll drag humanity back to where it belongs, below me. Naruto felt his pulse spike, the weight of it, the fear, the helplessness in that man's eyes. It snapped something loose. He didn't think, he didn't plan. He let instinct take over. Naruto drew from inside, not from his body, but from somewhere deeper. His spiritual chakra. A softer heat, lighter, lifting. He flung both arms wide. The air shook. A sudden shockwave pulsed out from him, cool, weightless, humming with pressure. The worker's body was yanked free, tossed safely down the aisle. The frog wobbled, confused. Even Animo flinched, looking around. Then, everything started to float. Shelves, cans, broken tech, trash, aisle signs. All of it lifted off the ground, hovering around Naruto like pieces of an unseen puzzle. Some began to fuse, junk clicking and merging together like magnets. Naruto looked around, breath catching. For a second, he was just as confused as they were. But then he smirked under the mask. He wasn't letting this man hurt anyone else. Not here. He split the energy again, his physical chakra this time, the pulling force, the heavier side. He drew everything in, every screw, every twisted display, every dented can and mangled aisle divider. A ball of junk began to take shape. It spun, dense and jagged, until it hovered above his palm, massive, compressed, volatile. Then he channeled spiritual energy through it. A Rasengan bloomed around the trash sphere. Larger, heavier, complete. He roared forward, and slammed it into the frog's chest. This time, the beast flew. It crashed through the cereal shelves, landing in a heap of bent metal and spilled flour. Naruto hit the ground, sliding, breathing hard. It worked. He looked down at his hands, that had been different. The spiritual energy had connected, woven things together. It didn't destroy, it reshaped. The opposite of his usual force. But there wasn't time to think. Animo stood again, pale with rage, his goggles twitched. His teeth ground together. "You're interfering still. I thought teaching that thing back there a lesson would have stopped you," he muttered under his breath. "You won't get out my way, I'll simply move you." He tapped a dial on the front of his coat. The lights on his helmet flashed red. The frog stood up, slower now, but still breathing. Then Animo turned and leapt, frog in tow, down another aisle. Naruto gave chase, but stopped short as he entered the pet section. That's when Animo raised a hand and twisted the dial again. A red beam fired from his helmet, streaking across the room, and struck a hamster cage. The tiny creature convulsed, grew, warped. Fur darkened, eyes bulged, claws erupted. It screeched once, then burst through the shattered cage, mutated and snarling. Animo pointed down the aisle, "Tear through them, show them what progress looks like." The beast darted forward, faster than expected. Toward the scattering customers. Naruto scowled. He didn't know what that thing was capable of, but he knew what it would do if he didn't stop it. And he was done letting Animo decide anyone else's fate. The hamster was faster than expected, darting and skidding across the polished floors with erratic energy, its oversized limbs crashing through shelves and displays as it careened toward panicked shoppers. Naruto followed close, keeping low, each step calculated to stay just ahead of its chaos. The thing squealed like an engine, its massive form barreling between aisles, knocking over stands of dog food and fish tanks alike. Naruto's fists clenched, he could tell this one had less mass than the frog. But more speed, more unpredictability. He couldn't let it get near anyone else. He skidded into a corner as it wheeled sharply toward an open space, and then saw exactly where it was going. Max and Gwen. Naruto's eyes widened, the creature was bearing down on them, fast, uncaring. Gwen looked up just in time to see it hurtling their way, her eyes going wide in shock. Max moved instinctively in front of her, but he was too slow. No, Naruto's thoughts narrowed into one word: protect. Before he even realized it, Chakra flared behind him. Two clones appeared, the first clone grabbed him and the other, launching him upward, then the second clone kicked him forward with a burst of momentum. He arced through the air, Rasengan already forming in his hand, Chakra swirling and crackling with violent momentum. The hamster was too close, there was no time to dodge, not that it seemed like it would. Naruto crashed down in front of Gwen with a hard slam, his arm cocked back. His eyes locked onto the beast. And then, he drove the Rasengan straight into the hamster's head. The boom echoed like a cannon blast, sending shockwaves through the aisle. The mutated rodent squealed as it was launched back through several stands of pet supplies, crashing into the far wall and finally slumping over in a dazed heap. Naruto panted, landing in a crouch, steam rising from his hands. He quickly turned back toward Gwen and Max, his voice steady but urgent. "You two all right?" Max gave a tight nod. Gwen was still wide-eyed, but she nodded too. Why yeah, that was close. Naruto barely had time to respond before a shadow fell across them. Animo. He was right there, at the end of the aisle, standing atop a stack of broken shelves, his form half-lit by the flickering fluorescent light overhead. The helmet glinted menacingly, and his eyes burned with mania. He raised his arms like a prophet addressing the unworthy. You see, you fight and you resist, and for what? He spat, his voice shrill and triumphant. The world is already mine, you just don't know it yet. You can't stop progress. You can't stop evolution, and you, he pointed a clawed finger directly at Naruto, you won't be around to delay it. Then he laughed, manic, triumphant, as he whistled sharply. The great mutated bird screeched from above, smashing through a skylight as it swooped in. Debris rained down, glass shattering across the floor. Animo leapt, landing perfectly on the bird's back. He turned once more to sneer down at them all. This isn't over, this is only the beginning. Phase 2 will reshape this world, and I'll be there, king of the new age. With that, the bird flapped violently, stirring up wind and wreckage as it rose into the air and vanished into the sky through the broken ceiling. Naruto stood frozen, watching the speck in the sky disappear. His jaw tensed. They were going to have to go after him. Outside, the city lights grew brighter. And somewhere ahead, so did the danger. Naruto leaned against the RV's side wall, watching the city lights blur past through the window. His mind kept circling back to Animo, how bizarre the man was. From the moment they'd encountered him, something felt off. Not just the rambling or the way he spoke like a stage actor on a breakdown, but deeper than that. Something unhinged. Even as Animo escaped into the chaos, they still didn't know who he really was. Why animals, why mutate them, why that kind of tech? He'd seen strange science before, but the kind of tech Animo used was leagues ahead of what should be publicly available. And the stolen components, what were they even for? They weren't just random junk, the precision of it all had weight behind it. Purpose. His thoughts were interrupted when Max suddenly muttered from the driver's seat, "This reminds me of the old days." Naruto blinked, glancing toward him, "Old days?" Max didn't answer immediately. Gwen turned in her seat, "What kind of plumber were you anyway, Grandpa?" There was a short hitch, barely noticeable, but Naruto caught it. Max shrugged with a tight grin, "A darn good one." Naruto raised an eyebrow, filing that away in the same place he kept questions about where Gamakichi had really been sent. Secrets layered behind a casual tone. But Max quickly shifted his attention to Ben, who was slumped in the front passenger seat, arms crossed and staring at the floor. "You okay, Ben?" Ben didn't look up right away. "He knocked me out," he mumbled. "One hit, a tongue flick, I didn't even see it coming." Naruto lifted his gaze at that, locking eyes with Ben through the rearview mirror. For all of Ben's usual bravado, this felt real, quiet, frustrated. Max's voice came steady. "It was one fight, Ben, that doesn't make or break anything." Ben let out a sigh, "Yeah, well, it sure felt like it." "You're still learning the watch," Max said. "You were quick, you got in, but sometimes speed isn't enough. Sometimes instinct isn't either. You've got to learn from the loss, not dwell in it." There was a long pause before Ben muttered, "Easy for you to say, you're not the one getting one shot." Max smiled faintly, glancing over at him, "I've been taken down before, we all have, you'll be stronger for it." Naruto watched the exchange quietly, reading between the lines. It wasn't just about the mission. It was about growth, expectations, and the weight Ben was slowly starting to feel. Maybe more than he was letting on. "I found it," Gwen called from the table. Naruto stood, stepping beside her and leaning in to read the screen. Gwen's breath caught slightly when he got close, her cheeks coloring, but she didn't say anything. Naruto read aloud, his tone quiet but firm. "Dear Aloysius Animo, 10 years ago, a world-renowned scientist. Genetic mutations, breakthroughs in small animal enhancement, that all checks out. He narrowed his eyes. But then it says he lost some major scientific award. Something prestigious. He wasn't just bitter, he snapped, went underground. 5 years later, he shows up again, with a small army of mutated animals, finds the guy who supposedly stole some award from him, and kills him. He paused, then disappears. Naruto leaned back slightly, blinking as he realized how close he'd been to Gwen. He gave an awkward chuckle and stepped away, scratching his neck. Sorry. Gwen cleared her throat and waved it off, though her face was still a bit red. Max's voice came next, gruff and frustrated. We lost him. He kept his eyes on the road, could be going anywhere in DC right now. Naruto's eyes widened, Animo's voice echoed in his mind, Washington, B.C. He turned toward Max, the Natural History Museum, that's where he'd go. Max didn't ask how he knew, he just hit the gas. They arrived at the museum's entrance, the night air still thick with tension. The massive front doors were bent inward like something had torn straight through them. Shattered glass littered the steps, and just beside the wreckage lay a single, oversized feather, bright white like snow. It was nearly as long as Max's arm. Max crouched beside it, fingers brushing the edge. Well, Naruto, looks like you were right. Naruto nodded once, golden hair shifting with the breeze. If that thing's here, we're already behind, don't expect him to be unprepared. With that, the group slipped inside. The museum was eerily quiet. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting pale light over dioramas frozen in time. They moved through the first exhibit, a recreation of ancient Mesopotamia. Stone idols, faded tapestries, a cracked replica of the Ishtar Gate. Their footsteps echoed down the tiled halls as they passed into the second area, early human history. Wax figures of prehistoric people huddled near mock fires and cave walls etched in paint. They rounded a corner and entered the main bone gallery. Skeletons of extinct animals lined the towering hall, saber-toothed cats, terror birds, mammoths, mastodons, a looming Tyrannosaurus rex in mid-roar. Most were elevated on raised platforms, surrounded by panels of historical info and QR tags for virtual displays. But at the far end of the room, someone moved, tinkering with wires, muttering under his breath. The man was hunched over a control panel cobbled together from scrap tech. Power cables snaked across the floor, plugged into a massive rig welded to the wall. Naruto moved quietly, feet gliding across the tile. But before he could make his move, "Don't," the man said, voice echoing down the hall. He stood, slowly turning around. In one hand he held a dead man's switch, thumb pressed firmly to the trigger. Take one more step, you and whoever else you dragged along won't be walking out of here, not in one piece. Naruto froze. He recognized the type of switch instantly, basic but deadly. If the man's thumb slipped, this whole wing of the museum would collapse in on itself. The stranger turned fully, revealing a gaunt face stretched with deep lines. Greasy gray hair curled from beneath a domed helmet fitted with glowing red lenses. His lab coat was filthy, one sleeve half burned. Beneath the grime and madness, his eyes landed directly on Naruto. "You must be the blonde," he said, tilting his head. "The one who's been annoying my pets." His lips curled. "You look odd without your mask, and where, pray tell, is your giant lizard friend?" Naruto kept his tone even. "Doesn't matter where he is, what matters is that you stop whatever you're planning." The man gave a low, bitter laugh. "Stop, oh my boy, we've barely even started. As for your concern, don't be, what I took from the Mega Mart is none of your business." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "Then why all this stolen tech, mutated animals, what are you building?" The man shook his head, almost sadly. "Persistence, you know what I hate more than failure, persistence." Ben stepped forward now, voice firm. "It's over, freak, give it up." The man lifted his head. Oh, on the contrary. He raised his helmet, and a pulse of energy surged from the twin horns attached to it, red, unstable, humming with power. The beam struck the mammoth skeleton behind him. Flesh began to crawl over bone. Chunks of muscle burst from the inside out, cords of sinew latching across ribs. A thick, gray hide wrapped around it like liquid fabric, solidifying in seconds. In a matter of moments. The creature was whole, massive, tusked, and breathing. Its red eyes glowed, locked onto them like prey. Naruto took a step back, stunned. This wasn't just mutation. This was complete reanimation, control at a cellular level. If it acted anything like the other animals, it wouldn't hesitate to kill. And it would follow Animo's commands without question. "Behold my genius," the man declared, stepping backward toward the exit. "And I assure you, this won't be the last you see of it tonight." With that, he was gone, vanishing into the dark corridor as the monstrous mammoth snorted steam from its nostrils. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Gwen whispered, "What do we do?" Naruto's mind was already calculating: walls, cover, the weight of the ceiling if it collapsed. But Ben stepped forward instead, cracking his neck. "I've got this one," he said. "You guys go after the lunatic, I'll take on Big, Horned, and Hairy." Naruto turned to look at him. Ben's face was steady, serious, the same glint he usually had returning, even if this one was weaker. Naruto gave a nod, "Be careful." Ben just nodded back, "Always." Then the mammoth charged. Naruto turned, grabbed Gwen's hand without thinking, and bolted toward the corridor Animo escaped through, Max following close behind. Behind them, the ground shook as Ben met the beast head-on. Naruto led the way as they pushed deeper into the museum. The air inside was thicker now, carrying the heavy scent of metal, dust, and something unnatural, something cooked in labs and born from madness. Their boots echoed against the tile, past displays of ancient tools and skeletons frozen mid-roar. Dinosaurs lined the exhibit halls, towering above them with jaws wide and claws posed in violent tension. Raptors. Stegosaurs. A nearly complete Tyrannosaurus stretching its body across the length of the final display room like a predator just waiting for a reason to move. And in the middle of all of it, Animo. The man was hunched near a capsule the size of a small car, wires coiled around it like a nest of snakes. A loud click hissed from some device as his mutated bird swooped in from a shattered skylight above. Its wingspan nearly clipping the museum walls. With practiced precision, it hooked the capsule in its talons and lifted off again, vanishing through the open ceiling. Gwen's hand lifted toward it but dropped just as fast, too late for action. Naruto's focus stayed on Animo, who turned toward them with that same wide, twitching smile. His eyes danced with the erratic brightness of a man lost in his own world. "You're not stopping me," Animo said suddenly, his voice rising like a stage actor at the climax of a tragedy. "You're too late, too small-minded, too human." Gwen stepped forward, voice steady but sharp. "What was in that capsule? What exactly are you doing?" "We found your old reports. The high-tech, the disappearance. People have been hurt, are you trying to kill more?" Animo's shoulders tensed, then slowly, he rose to his full height. "Kill, no, never, not again anyways. The last bit of blood on my hands was a happy accident, but death, as a whole, is a symptom of stagnation, but evolution." His eyes lit up. "That's where life truly begins." Naruto frowned, tension rising in his gut. The way Animo stood, the way he spoke, none of it felt like someone bluffing. The man was committed, steady hands, jittering voice. He was chaos dressed in purpose. Animo tilted his head slightly, like he was weighing how much to give away. "You see, Washington is a city trapped in fossilized thinking. The crime has skyrocketed since I've been gone, it's uncontrollable chaos. Before it can evolve, it must first be reduced, washed clean. He threw a hand to the sky. That capsule carries a synthetic compound capable of infecting all biological life within a 50-mile radius. Once dispersed, I'll use my transmodulator to broadcast a convergent wave across the city. Animals, humans, insects, reborn, rewritten, under my guidance. Naruto's jaw clenched. And that's just the beginning, Animo's voice cracked with joy. Every major city in America will follow. I'll lead the species into a new age, into my age. Gwen shook her head. You're insane. Insanity is merely genius denied. Animo barked, turning on her. And you, little girl, wouldn't understand what it means to have your brilliance ignored. Naruto took a slow step forward. The dead man switch was still in Animo's hand, thumb pressed tightly. If he slipped, the whole building was gone. Animo, Naruto said, voice low. You're smarter than this, you know innocent people will die. Animo's expression twitched, flickering for a second. And what would a child like you know about the cost of greatness? I know what it means to be hurt and still not want to spread it, Naruto said. I know what it's like to lose someone you care about and wonder what you could have done differently. I know what happens when someone who's broken tries to fix the world without fixing themselves first. There was a flicker behind Animo's glasses, a moment, half a second. And then it shattered. Enough. Animo slammed his free hand against the transmodulator's control panel. A red beam surged forward and struck the nearest skeleton, a Tyrannosaurus. The bones shuddered. Ribs jerked, muscle and sinew began to knit over the bones like a nightmare unfolding. The creature roared, low, guttural, alive. Behold, Animo cried, spinning in place with manic glee. My prehistoric army, let the city crumble under their steps, let the old world be devoured by the past. More beams flashed, hitting two other skeletons. Raptors dropped from their displays, limbs twitching and reforming. A pterosaur above them began to flap rotten wings, its screech rattling the glass. One of the raptors lunged, claws swiping Gwen off her feet and dragging her back. Gwen, Naruto, and Max yelled in unison. The chaos exploded. A raptor burst through a wall, the T-Rex barreled toward the museum's exit, smashing through glass and steel like paper. Alarms howled. Naruto's eyes locked on the retreating bird, Gwen caught in its grip. He could see her kicking, trying to wriggle free. Fear spiked through him. Animo vanished behind the growing cloud of dust and noise, but his voice echoed like a phantom. This is the beginning, you will thank me when you've evolved. Max grabbed Naruto by the shoulder, pulling him back behind a tipped display case as another skeleton came to life. Naruto, listen to me, that capsule, if what he said is true, it's our top priority. I can't let Gwen, I know, Max nodded, his eyes were serious, but not panicked. And that's why you're the one who goes after her. You're the only one who can move fast enough to catch that bird. I'll stay behind, I'll figure out where that capsule's headed, and how to shut it down. Naruto hesitated. Go, she needs you. Naruto exhaled slowly. Gwen was screaming somewhere in the sky. The dinosaurs were spilling into the streets. Animo's madness had only just begun. He tightened his fists, already channeling chakra to his legs. All right, he muttered. I'm going. Then he vanished in a blur of motion, chasing the wind and the shadow of wings that carried Gwen away into the city night. Naruto's feet hit the pavement with force, chakra burning through his legs as he sprinted past shattered glass and chaos. His breath was steady, but his mind was racing. Screams echoed from inside the museum. Horns blared. Somewhere behind him, a dinosaur let out a roar that shook the windows of a parked sedan. But all of that blurred into background noise. His eyes were locked on the sky. Gwen. The mutated bird was climbing higher, wings stretching wide as it veered through downtown, its claws wrapped tight around her arms. She struggled, but it was no use, they were already too high, too fast. Naruto weaved through the wreckage, leaping over crushed cars, ducking under a low-hanging tail of some mutated stegosaur. Every step had to be exact, miss one beat, and he was done. This city is falling apart, he thought grimly. And I'm chasing a damn bird across it like this is just another mission. He kicked off a fire hydrant, flipping onto the roof of a passing bus. From that height, he had a clear view of Gwen, her hair whipping in the wind, fear tightening her shoulders. The bird beat its wings harder, climbing above the buildings now. Naruto surged forward again, leaping rooftop to rooftop, pumping chakra into his calves with every bound. The wind tore at his jacket. The city blurred beneath him. Focus, you've done harder things than this. But even as he told himself that, doubt clawed at the back of his mind. He was fast, but was he fast enough? A shadow passed overhead, the bird stalled midair. No, no. Naruto whispered. And then it dropped her. Gwen screamed. Naruto's heart lunged. Shit, he growled, launching himself off the rooftop with everything he had. He didn't think, didn't breathe, just moved. Wind howled in his ears as he soared through open air, eyes fixed on the falling blur of red hair and pale skin. The skyline spun around him, a heartbeat, two, then, he caught her. Their momentum nearly pulled him off course, but he tucked her close, one arm around her back, the other pressed beneath her knees. He flared chakra through his limbs, slowing their fall just enough to land with a heavy roll on the edge of a construction crane. Dust kicked up around them. Gwen clutched his jacket, eyes wide. She was breathing hard, face flushed, not just from the fall. Why you caught me? Naruto gave a small breathless grin, adjusting his grip. Yeah, would've sucked if I missed. Her heart pounded against his chest. She blinked a few times, clearly trying to find something to say. You didn't have to catch me like a princess or anything. He shrugged, still half crouched from the landing. You want me to drop you and try again? That got a laugh, nervous, but real. Their eyes met, then she looked away quickly, cheeks burning. Naruto's own face stayed steady, but inside he was trying to keep his thoughts from spiraling. That bird dropped her without hesitation, just a warning shot, or a tactic. He looked back toward the skyline, the bird had curved out of sight, flying west, probably toward wherever Animo planned to launch the next stage of his plan. This guy's more dangerous than I thought. He finally glanced down at Gwen, who was still recovering. You alright? She nodded, yeah, thanks to you. He let her down gently onto the platform. Then he stood, eyes narrowing in the direction the bird had gone. Alright, he muttered. Time to clip its wings. The last crash echoed through the museum as four arms hurled the mutated mammoth straight into the marble wall, the massive beast cracking through with a low bellow before it slumped unconscious into a pile of rubble and broken glass. Ben dropped to a crouch, breathing hard, red skin scraped and bruised. His four muscular arms flexed slightly as he stood. Each movement carried weight, shoulders thick. Frame towering, red flesh glinting with the dust and grime of the battle. Black stripes etched across his forearms and torso, and his signature white tank with the hourglass symbol stretched across his chest. Guess that's the last one, Ben thought, rolling his shoulders with a grunt. Hope they all handled the rest of this mess. He took one step forward, and the hourglass symbol on his chest blinked red. With a flash of green light, his towering form shrunk back down into his human self, stumbling slightly on the uneven ground. He blinked, catching his breath as the echo of power left his limbs. Great, he muttered, glancing down at the watch. Right when I needed it most. Ben started toward the main hall again, but paused, hearing the creak of a door. Animo stepped back into the room, still clutching the dead man's switch tight in one hand, his cloak dragging across the floor, his face twisted with focus. He was muttering under his breath, something about energy fields, about stabilizers, about an uplift protocol, too quiet to catch all of it. Ben ducked behind a broken column, pressing his back to the cool stone. What is he planning now, he wondered. There's no way this guy's done. Not with the way he was raving earlier. Ben glanced down at the red dial on his watch, still no green, still locked out. What am I supposed to do without it? He swallowed, hard. Without it, I'm just some kid. That thought hit deeper than it should have. For a second, all he saw was Animo standing there, still powerful, still holding the detonator that could wreck the city, and Ben was just, Ben, I can't stop him like this, not like this. But then something pulled at his memory, Naruto's voice, steady, blunt, like it always was. You don't need the watch to be a hero. Ben clenched his fists. He shook the doubt out of his head. Okay, I can do this, he won't expect me to try without it. I just need to hit him fast, get the switch, and end it. Ben peeked out once more. Animo was still pacing, distracted, mumbling about power surges and signal relays. Now. With a surge of adrenaline, Ben darted out from behind the rubble, sprinting across the floor in total silence. Animo barely turned before Ben tackled him from the side, grabbing his wrist, the one with the switch, and digging in his weight. The villain shrieked, twisting, but Ben gritted his teeth and held on, pressing down just hard enough to keep the pressure exact. No, get off, Animo flailed. Ben slammed his knee into the man's side, driving him down. With his free hand, he yanked the strange helmet from Animo's head and flung it aside, then cracked his elbow across the scientist's jaw. Animo went limp. Ben sat there for a moment, breathing heavy, hand still wrapped tight around the switch in case. He slowly pried it from Animo's fingers and stood up, staring at the device. Okay, one part down, now what the heck do I do with this? Just then, the door slammed open. Naruto stepped through with Gwen in tow, eyes scanning until they landed on Ben, and widened. Ben raised the device awkwardly. Surprise? Naruto blinked, then smirked. You really tackled him yourself? Ben nodded, still a little dazed. He didn't see me coming, remembered what you said, about not needing the watch. Naruto walked over, inspecting the device before taking it gently from Ben's hand. His fingers traced the trigger, flipping it in a clean movement before the switch gave a soft click. Disarmed. He looked back at Ben. You did good. Ben rubbed the back of his neck, eyes flicking to the watch. You were right, but I still feel like I could have frozen up, you know? You didn't, Naruto said plainly. That's what matters. There was a pause. Hey, when all this is over, Ben added, do you think you could train me, like, for real? Naruto gave a short nod, one corner of his mouth lifting. Yeah, I think it's about time. They both turned as Gwen stepped closer, visibly relieved. Ben looked down at Animo, then back at his watch. This time, I won without it. He smiled. And for the first time in a long while, it actually felt earned. That's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and comment ideas if you can, and maybe you could share this with your friends, because you never know, they might like what ifs too. So without further ado, All Kage, out.